Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today. This is an anxious time for our city and the surrounding area, but I am filled with gratitude that our community is responding by focusing on preparation, protection, and not panic. We have the right experts to chart our path forward, and we are doing what we do best, and that is to collaborate and take preventive action. The social distancing strategies that Director Goddard will outline today are going to be very helpful in our continued efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in Springfield and Greene County. We do recognize, however, that in difficult times, people need one another. We must find a balance in creating connections that a void of social distancing can bring. Times of trouble, people especially need their faith. We value the faith community, and we are leaning on them to help us figure out ways by which we can all stay connected while minimizing risk to our more vulnerable neighbors. We are continuing discussions with faith leaders about this very important issue and are grateful for their partnership and assistance as we navigate this journey together. You will be hearing more about this in the coming week as we ask our interfaith community to work together alongside our public health professionals. Many of our larger congregations offer online worship services, and I would encourage people to take advantage of those offerings and to help their friends and family access them online if at all possible. Small groups can stay connected through video or phone conferencing. Many churches use prayer chains, email, messaging, texting, and other types of things to stay connected. More guidance will be provided in the coming days and weeks from the faith and public health communities. Finally, I would ask for a day of prayer this Sunday, March 15, in our houses of worship, asking each of you to pray in your own faith tradition for our city, our state, and our nation. Let us all see this situation as a time for unity, for strength, and a time for support for all those affected by this virus. We talk a lot about collaboration. No better example of this between the city and the county than the Springfield-Greene County Health Department, and I'm delighted to welcome my colleague, Commissioner Harold Bench from the Greene County Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. The situation that we find ourselves in today is one that is of major concern to many people. What I hope you will hear today from Clay, and I know he will do this, is to address those major concerns in a manner which you will see a call, as the mayor said, for this community to come together in a collaborative manner to address those issues before us. The faith community plays an extremely important role here. And that call for them to work with us in that collaborative manner is one done out of a heart of sincerity. We are so fortunate in this community to have a health department that is state of the art. And we're so fortunate to have a director who has worked tirelessly in bringing the community together to address this important situation. And it gives me great pleasure to bring Clay Goddard, the Director of Public Health for Springfield-Greene County, to the podium. Clay?
Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Mayor McClure. It's a real privilege to work in a community where we have strong leadership from our elected officials and their full support as we take on challenges that most of us have not seen. I want to thank you for joining us today. As last night we announced our first presumptive positive case of COVID-19 in Greene County, this was something that we knew was coming. And this community is prepared and united in our efforts to combat the illness. We're ready for the fight, and we will fight. We need everyone on board and doing your part. Now that we've had our first case, many of you will wonder what is next. We are now in what we in the public health field call the containment phase. We will use strategies that are likely as old as the dawn of civilization. We interview the patient to determine where they contracted the illness, when symptoms began, and who they have been in contact with during the course of their illness. The next step is to reach out to those that might have been exposed. And in the case of COVID-19, we are taking a very aggressive approach. All contacts to a positive case will be issued an order of quarantine that will last for at least 14 days from the exposure date. The initial patient has also been ordered to isolate. We do this work silently, behind the scenes, every day of the year. It's not always specific to COVID-19. We have highly trained staff that take their jobs very seriously, and they are working hard to protect the public's health. I am very proud of the work they do and very lucky to have such a talented group working in this health department. We know that people are going to experience disruptions in their lives as a result of this illness. But it's very important that we work collectively as a community to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I've already told you about our staff working around the clock to set up our testing mechanisms, and we will launch our mobile testing unit on Monday. I've already told you, but I need your help in being incredibly clear and getting the word out that this testing site will be by physician referral only. Members of the public will not be able to respond on site for screening on their own. The goal of this site is to streamline testing among those people our local physicians believe to be symptomatic and in those high-risk groups. An individual who has concerns about their health should contact their physician, use virtual care options like those outlined on our website, or call the state hotline for more information. That number is 417-874-1211. Again, I reiterate that this testing site will only be available to those referred by a physician. People who show up without a referral will be turned away. We keep talking about bending or flattening the curve in an effort to limit the spread of the illness and to avoid a sudden spike of cases. It's activities like washing your hands, staying home if you're sick, and avoiding large groups that flatten the curve. This will take a collective effort from all citizens, a responsible, conscientious group of individuals making tough decisions together, and many of these decisions will have to be made in the coming days. With that in mind, I am asking that community events expecting 250 people or more voluntarily postpone or suspend for the time being. I don't consider workplaces or schools to be a part of that list. I'm referring to mass gatherings bringing people together in one large space. I also want to specifically address our faith community. In times of uncertainty, so many of us look to our faith and to our faith community for reassurance and comfort. I think that that is a vital part of this pandemic response. And in Springfield, Missouri, the faith community is part of the fundamental fabric of our community. But I also think about my mother, who has faithfully been in the pews of her church every Sunday for as long as I can remember. I talked about her, I think, yesterday. I got in trouble, by the way, for mentioning her age. So, Mom, I'm not mentioning your age today. She's agreed that it's the best course of action, and if my mother can agree, then others can as well. She's going to have a hard time, and it's on my family and her neighbors and friends to make sure she doesn't feel alone during these tough times. I'd also challenge our faith leaders to think creatively. There are things that we can do like live streaming services and other options to keep their flock connected. That said, I recognize that today's Friday. We know that faith leaders might not be able to change plans for services this weekend. So we ask that they think ahead to their services next weekend. I also want to reiterate the importance of high-risk groups, those 60 and older with chronic health conditions. Catherine, like heart disease, lung disease, or diabetes, or are otherwise immune compromised, taking this situation seriously. It is their recommendation of the health, it is the recommendation of the health department that people who match these criteria take extra precautions for the time being. And this includes staying home as much as possible and avoiding unnecessary travel. Have a plan if you get sick. Have supplies on hand. And take everyday precautions like washing hands, cleaning and disinfecting your home regularly, and avoiding crowds. And with that, I'll now take your questions.
Do you have an update on the tests that had been submitted? Have there been any more tests submitted? What's the update on that?
We have a total of 6 tested, so and that's from the beginning of testing. So I think that that is consistent with the number we had yesterday.
Okay. And all of those were negative?
We're still pending test results, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clay, you mentioned people to contact their primary provider. A lot of people in our communities don't have insurance, don't have a primary provider. Where should those people go if they have a concern?
At that point, I would recommend that they call our hotline, and they can get referral through either a urgent care or an emergency room. But it's important that we call ahead, that we don't self-present, in particular if we have symptoms.
Based on some things that I've been reading out of Ohio, I think specifically the health director there estimated that even though they'd only had a couple presumptive positive tests, there were perhaps thousands more who may have been affected. What's your read on that? Are more people likely infected, and what do we need to do about it?
It's a concern. This is a condition that obviously is very mild in nature. And so I think that we have to work under the assumption that we probably have some undetected spread in the community. That's a safe assumption to work under. And I think that drives home the importance of things like canceling these large events and taking precautions if you fall into that high-risk group. That doesn't mean that that we're going to live in fear, but we're going to take smart, intelligent steps to help bend that curve down. And we have the support of our leadership to do that. So let's work as a community together to bend the curve.
Something that we were wondering about, this is the first weekend since we had our first case here in the county. I know you guys do the checks for health inspections for various, restaurants or retailers or whatever it may be. Is there anything extra? Are you guys going to be a little more strict on some of those things as far as the health inspections that you do for various restaurants or anything like that?
The standards for health inspections with restaurants would not change.
From a policy perspective, from your perspective as an expert, do you believe that there's anything more that the state or other policymakers should be doing to address this issue?
So testing, continues to be a part, but there's scarcity. And so it's the scarcity of testing that is creating kind of a bottleneck right now. We continue to work aggressively on strategies where we can build our capacity. We've been able to get kits into the community. We're not ready to answer the specifics about that, but I think we're going to have enough on the ground here, certainly to do this drive-through clinic on Monday. It'll begin on Monday. So I think that that's an issue that will take care of itself, and that's where you're hearing a lot of the pain points. I believe Dr. Fauci talked about that a little bit before Congress.
Willard School has notified parents today that 2 students were kind of proactively taken out of school voluntarily because of some 3rd or 4th hand connection to a possible exposure. Do you guys know anything about that?
I wouldn't consider that to be an epi-linked case, so, but I wouldn't know specifics about it either, but just based on the scenario you presented to me.
Nothing you guys are looped in on though?
If I knew about it, I wouldn't talk specifics about it, but it doesn't sound like anything I'm familiar with.
When was the person who is...
Can I hang on a second? There are a lot of telephone games going on in the community, and there are a lot of people that think that they have the scoop. And I've been hearing for 3 or 4 weeks that we've had positive cases. I think I was the first person they called when we had a positive case. So just understand that this is how a community works through the anxiety. There's a lot of stories. So let's be very cautious with those stories that we hear. Understand, yesterday We found out at 3:15. You knew at 6. So actually, you had figured it out before 6. So to me, that is showing governmental transparency. And also, remember what I've told you before, we have a duty to warn, and we take that role and responsibility very seriously. It's part of my professional ethos. I learned it from that guy right there. So, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Yeah.
But the person yesterday, when were they tested? The person who's the presumptive positive?
Been the day before the test result, I believe. So
And there's,
those state tests are pretty rapid turnaround.
and then there's still the state basketball tournament going on. You just
Mhm.
recommended that you close anything that has greater than 250 people. Would that be included in that umbrella that you would recommend shutting it down?
So we negotiated that size down to with the crowd for this first weekend because we did it last minute. We also took significant criticism for that, but those numbers were limited to 150 spectators per side. This announcement comes today. I think in an arena that size, 300 people, I'm comfortable with that. Once again, this is a recommendation. We are not requiring this, but it is our recommendation at this time. It's also consistent with CDC's mitigation guidance, and there are trigger points then when you go further and mandate restrictions on crowd size, but we're not at that point yet.
What would take us to get to that point?
I think you need to have a significant community spread and evidence that you have that community spread that's not tied to known cases. It's hard for me to tell you it's 3 cases, it's 5 cases. As a public health director, you know it when you see it, and it's a confluence of art and science together. So you just have to rely on what we know about our jurisdiction and trust that we're going to make the right call.
Where's that mobile clinic going to be set up at?
We're not going to talk about that. We know that you'll find out, but what I am cautious about is we will have Worried Well show up. Okay, that is not the place for Worried Well to show up because we're going to be turning them around, and they get in the way then of people that are there for legitimate reason that have been referred by a physician. So I know you'll find out, but we're not going to publicize that location.
Like Dr. Fauci was on CNN yesterday, and they asked him whether he would be afraid to travel, and he said, well, he's a 79-year-old man, he wouldn't travel for pleasure, but if there was a business deal or something that he had to travel to, he wouldn't be afraid to go. Is that kind of where you are, that people maybe should tame back a little bit their personal activities, but shouldn't be afraid to go out to a doctor's appointment or some other necessary action?
I believe what Dr. Fauci, and correct me if I'm wrong, was referring to if he had to do plane travel, that sort of thing. For people that fall into that high-risk group, we are recommending that they consider suspending their travel plans. I know that there are several organizations here in town that have suspended out-of-state travel for all employees. So I think that that's an intelligent use of your company policies, and it's a good approach for people definitely in that high-risk group to take on. As far as going out into the community, we're recommending that they avoid those large congregate settings, but we realize that people have to live their lives. You cannot hermetically seal yourself. So when you do go out in the community, practicing safe hand hygiene and those sorts of things are the right approach. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much. You're doing a great job covering this, and I appreciate your hard work. Be healthy.